My ex slept with my sister and stole my dead mother's necklace, so I made sure they both went to jail. And a lifetime of regret. My high school sweetheart Chad and I were the it couple in our tiny town. Best friends since second grade. Everyone swore we'd get married right out of high school. But I had other dreams, bigger ones. When I got accepted into a top-tier university out of state, he did the opposite of supporting me like he always said he would. He flipped out, said I was abandoning him, said college was a waste, said you're not as smart as you think you are. I remember hiding my grades from him, hiding my acceptance letter, because every time I succeeded, he sulked, like my wins were insults. Just when I was trying to decide between staying home with him or chasing my future, I walked in on him and my older sister together in my bed. The betrayal hit like a freight train, but the real twist? My family blamed me. They said, "That's what happens when you're already 1 foot out the door, and I should have seen it coming." So I left. I packed up and went no contact. And I built the life I dreamed of. I earned my doctorate, worked insane hours, and made it. Then, last fall, I got a message, "Hey, saw you on the hospital website, so proud of you. Want to catch up?" It was him, Chad, the one who told me I wasn't smart enough, the one who stole my sister. At first I ignored it, but curiosity is a funny thing. We met for coffee. He looked rough, tired, but sweet, like the boy I used to know. He said he was sorry, said he thought about me often. He was unemployed, going through a hard time. I told myself it was just for a few nights I let him stay at my place. He cleaned, cooked, told jokes. He even made me a playlist, like we used to do back in the day. He planned a little dinner one night, candles, cheap wine, and homemade pasta. By the end of the night, we slept together. I wanted to believe it, that maybe the past had been a fluke, that maybe people really did change, and we could be together like we always planned. But then, 2 weeks later, I came home from a shift, and my apartment was empty. All my furniture, jewelry, and TV were gone. My bank account was drained. He even took my dead mother's necklace, the only thing I had left of her. At first, I thought I was robbed. Then I checked the security footage. There he was, and her, my sister, loading my life into a rented van. I called my family, and you know what they said? They have 3 kids. They needed help. 3 kids from the marriage they had after I left, a marriage that also ended in flames. Apparently they were out of money, so they came for mine. I cried for weeks, but then I stopped crying and started planning. First, I called in every favor from law school buddies, friends in finance, even an ex-colleague at the DMV. I tracked down where they were living. I found the storage unit they were using. I posed as a representative from the rental company, claimed the unit was overdue and needed inventory before auction, and took photos of all my stuff. Then I filed suit. Then I found the Instagram account my sister used for her mommy influencer brand. She was promoting a fake charity drive, so I shared screenshots, footage, evidence, every lie they ever told, to local mom groups, tagging the charity she was pretending to support. She lost sponsors within hours. Then came the ex. He had started working under the table at a local mechanic shop. I tipped off the IRS, anonymously, of course. When the lawsuit hit, they begged to settle. I said, no, I wanted court. I wanted a record. I wanted her mugshot beside his. And I got it. They were charged, forced to pay restitution. My family reached out after. You didn't have to ruin them. I said I didn't. They did that all by themselves. Now, I've moved to a new apartment, decorated it exactly the way I wanted. The apartment was on the 12th floor of a building with 24-hour security and keycard access to every floor. I chose every piece of furniture deliberately. The restraining orders were framed, but I barely had time to savor my victory when the symptoms started. Random waves of nausea that left me clutching bathroom sinks, headaches that pulsed behind my eyes, fatigue so profound that triple-shot espressos barely made a dent. At first, I blamed stress. The trial had been emotionally draining, and I'd picked up extra shifts at the hospital to compensate for time lost to court appearances. The nausea came without warning, mid-sentence during patient consultations, while driving home from work, once even during a department meeting where I had to excuse myself abruptly, barely making it to the restroom before emptying my stomach. The headaches were constant companions, dull throbs that occasionally sharpened into ice picks behind my eyes, making concentration nearly impossible. The fatigue was perhaps the most insidious symptom, a bone-deep exhaustion that sleep couldn't touch, as if my very cells were running on empty. I self-medicated with over-the-counter remedies, antacids for the nausea, ibuprofen for the headaches, caffeine in increasingly potent forms for the fatigue. I adjusted my diet, cutting out potential triggers like dairy and gluten. I tried meditation apps and essential oils recommended by a well-meaning nurse. Nothing helped. But when dizziness hit me during rounds one morning, a patient chart nearly slipping from my fingers as the hallway tilted sideways, I knew something was wrong. The hospital corridor seemed to elongate suddenly. The the fluorescent lights overhead blurring into streaks of harsh white. The patient chart in my hands became impossibly heavy, the words swimming on the page like alphabet soup. I reached for the wall to steady myself, my palm flat against the cool surface, fingers splayed as I tried to anchor myself to something solid. "Dr. Sanders?" A nurse's voice seemed to come from very far away, though logically she was standing right beside me. "Are you all right?" I nodded automatically, a doctor's reflex to appear competent at all times, even as the floor beneath me seemed to roll like the deck of a ship in rough seas. "Just a moment of vertigo," I managed, the words feeling thick in my mouth. "I'm fine." But I wasn't fine. The dizziness passed after a few minutes, leaving behind a residual unsteadiness and the unsettling realization that something was seriously wrong with my health. "You look like hell," my colleague Danny said bluntly as we changed in the locker room, her dark eyes assessing me with clinical precision. And that's coming from someone who just worked a 36-hour shift with 3 code blues. The locker room was empty except for us, the harsh overhead lighting accentuating the shadows under my eyes, the pallor of my skin. The metal lockers lined up like soldiers against the wall, the bench between us worn smooth from years of doctors and nurses changing in hurried shifts. Danny's scrubs were rumpled from her marathon shift, her curly hair escaping from its ponytail in rebellious spirals. Yet somehow, she looked more alive than I felt. I splashed cold water on my face, watching rivulets trace paths down my 2 pale cheeks. "Thanks for the compliment. Your bedside manner is impeccable." The water felt shockingly cold against my skin, momentarily clearing the fog that seemed to permanently cloud my brain these days. I patted my face dry with a rough paper towel, the abrasive texture another small shock to my system, another attempt to feel something beyond the persistent malaise. "Seriously," she persisted, tying her curly hair back. "Have you been tested for anemia mono? You've been off for weeks, and don't think people haven't noticed." I hadn't told anyone at work about Chad or the theft or the court case. As far as my colleagues knew, I'd had a bad stomach bug and some vague personal issues. The last thing I needed was to become hospital gossip, whispered about in break rooms and supply closets. Hospitals are notorious rumor mills, information traveling faster through staff channels than through official medical records. I'd seen careers affected by personal gossip, a surgeon whose divorce became fodder for speculation about his mental stability, a nurse whose financial troubles led to whispers about potential substance theft. I was determined not to become the next cautionary tale, the doctor whose messy personal life overshadowed her professional competence. "I'm fine," I insisted, straightening my scrubs with false confidence. "Just need more sleep and less caffeine." But that night, as I fumbled with my apartment keys, dropping them twice before managing to slide the key into the lock, fingers trembling like I'd aged 50 years overnight, I admitted to myself that I wasn't fine, not even close. The hallway outside my apartment seemed longer than usual, the distance from elevator to door stretching impossibly. The keys felt foreign in my hand, metal edges biting into fingers that couldn't seem to coordinate properly. The first time I dropped them, the sound of metal hitting tile echoed loudly in the empty corridor. The second time, my frustration brought tears to my eyes, a reaction disproportionate to the minor inconvenience but perfectly aligned with how terrible I felt physically. Inside my apartment, the symptoms seemed to intensify rather than abate. The nausea returned with a vengeance, sending me rushing to the bathroom, where I retched painfully, though my stomach was empty. The headache pulsed behind my eyes with renewed vigor, each heartbeat sending shards of pain through my skull. The trembling in my hands spread to my entire body, a fine tremor that made even the simple act of removing my shoes a challenge. The next morning I called in sick and drove to a different hospital across town, where nobody would recognize Dr. Sanders from neurology. I registered under my middle name and waited 3 hours in a hard plastic chair, watching daytime television with glazed eyes until an overworked ER doctor called me back. The waiting room was a study in human misery, a child with an obvious ear infection wailing in his mother's arms, an elderly man wheezing through what sounded like pneumonia, a teenager holding a blood-soaked towel around what was likely a broken finger. I sat among them, a doctor becoming a patient, experiencing the healthcare system from the other side. The daytime talk shows playing on the mounted television were mind-numbingly banal, hosts with 2 white teeth discussing celebrity breakups and miracle weight loss techniques, while people around me suffered in various degrees of pain and anxiety. When my alias was finally called, I followed a tired-looking nurse through double doors into the examination area. She took my vitals with mechanical efficiency. Blood pressure elevated, temperature slightly above normal, heart rate faster than it should be. She asked routine questions that I answered with the dual perspective of patient and physician, trying to provide clinically relevant information without revealing my medical background. "Your blood work shows some concerning abnormalities," Dr. Patel said, frowning at my chart, her brow furrowed. Elevated liver enzymes, low white blood cell count. Have you been exposed to any toxins recently? Dr. Patel was younger than me by a few years, her white coat crisp and ID badge, new enough that the edges hadn't started to fray. Her office was standard-issue hospital decor, a motivational poster about teamwork on one wall, a framed medical degree on another, a desk cluttered with patient files and half-empty coffee cups. She studied my lab results with the focused attention I recognized from my own practice, the slight narrowing of eyes that indicated concern rather than confusion. I hesitated, then told her everything, about Chad, the theft, the court case, and how I'd been feeling since. Her eyes widened with each detail. The story poured out of me in a rush, details I hadn't shared with anyone tumbling forth in the sterile safety of a stranger's office. I described the betrayal, the theft, the court case, clinical facts presented in chronological order. Then I moved to my symptoms, cataloging them with the precision of someone accustomed to taking medical histories. "We need to run more comprehensive tests," she said, already scribbling orders. "This could be residual damage from stress, or what?" I prompted when she trailed off. She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Or someone is still trying to harm you." The thought had crossed my mind in dark moments, but hearing it from a medical professional made my blood run cold. I'd changed my locks, installed a security system with motion sensors, checked my apartment thoroughly for signs of intrusion. "That's impossible," I said, more to convince myself than her. "Chad and my sister were sentenced to 18 months. They're both in jail." Dr. Patel ordered a full toxicology panel and sent me home with instructions to bring in samples of my food, water, and medications for testing. When I got home, I examined everything with new eyes. The apartment I thought was my sanctuary now felt like a potential death trap, every surface suspect. I moved through my apartment like a crime scene investigator, examining everything with newfound suspicion. The coffee I drank every morning, the filtered water from my refrigerator dispenser, the prescription medications in my bathroom cabinet, even the shower gel and shampoo I use daily, all potential vectors for harm. I collected samples of everything in sterile containers borrowed from the hospital, labeling each with meticulous care. My security system, which had seemed so comprehensive before, now revealed its weaknesses. The cameras covered entry points but not the entire apartment. The motion sensors could be triggered by a determined intruder who knew their placement. The locks, while new, weren't unpickable to someone with the right skills and tools. That night, I slept fitfully, waking at every small noise. The refrigerator cycling on, the heating system activating, the normal creaks and groans of a building settling. Each sound registered as a potential threat, sending adrenaline coursing through my system until I was exhausted yet completely unable to rest. 3 days later, the results came in. Traces of arsenic in my coffee beans, not enough to kill me outright, but sufficient to make me progressively sicker over time. "This is deliberate," Dr. Patel said, sliding the lab report across her desk. "Someone is slowly poisoning you." The lab report was printed on standard hospital stationery, the results highlighted in yellow, the toxic levels circled in red pen. The clinical language couldn't disguise the horrifying reality. Someone had been systematically introducing poison into my daily routine, calculating the dose to cause maximum suffering without immediate death. I sat in her sterile office, numb with shock. But how? Chad and my sister are in jail. They've been there for 2 months. Is there anyone else who might want to harm you? Someone connected to them? I thought about my family, who'd been so quick to defend the people who'd stolen from me, about the angry messages I'd received from my sister, his Instagram followers when her fake charity was exposed, about Chad's mechanic friends who'd lost their under-the-table worker when I reported him to the IRS. Too many to count, I admitted, the realization settling like lead in my stomach. That night, I didn't go home. I checked into a hotel under a false name, paid cash, and called Marcus, my attorney, from the theft case. "We need to talk," I said, voice low despite the privacy. "Someone's still trying to hurt me." The hotel room was anonymous and impersonal. Beige walls, generic landscape art, a polyester bedspread that had been washed thousands of times. I double-locked the door and wedged a chair under the handle, an extra precaution that probably looked paranoid but felt necessary. I didn't unpack, keeping my small overnight bag ready for a quick departure if needed. I didn't order room service, didn't use the coffee maker, didn't even drink from the tap. Instead, I walked 3 blocks to a convenience store and bought sealed bottled water and prepackaged snacks, examining each for signs of tampering before consuming them. We met at a 24-hour diner far from my usual haunts. I showed him the medical reports, the toxicology results, and watched his expression darken as he flipped through the pages. The diner was nearly empty at that late hour. Just a few truckers at the counter nursing coffee, a couple in, a corner booth speaking in hushed tones, a waitress with tired eyes and comfortable shoes moving between tables with practiced efficiency. The fluorescent lighting cast everyone in an unflattering pallor, highlighting the dark circles under Marcus's eyes, the worry lines that hadn't been there during the theft case. "Jesus," he muttered, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "This is attempted murder. But who and how? I've been so careful since the trial." Marcus tapped his fingers on the laminate table, thinking, "Let's approach this logically. Who has access to your apartment or your food? No one. I changed the locks after Chad was arrested. The building has security cameras in all common areas. What about cleaning services, maintenance workers?" I shook my head, pushing my untouched coffee aside. "I do everything myself now. Trust issues, obviously. Delivery services? Takeout?" I started to say no, then stopped, a cold realization dawning. "I order groceries online. They're delivered while I'm at work. I just give instructions to leave them outside my door." Marcus's eyes narrowed, catching my train of thought. "That could be it. Someone could be tampering with your deliveries before you get home." We set up a sting operation worthy of a crime drama. I ordered groceries as usual, but had them delivered to a different address, Marcus's office, where we installed cameras to monitor the delivery process. Nothing seemed amiss. The regular delivery person, a college student named Tyler, dropped off the bags with board efficiency, no tampering evident. Marcus's office was in a converted Victorian house, the conference room where we set up our surveillance equipment, still featuring original crown molding and a non-functional fireplace. We positioned cameras to capture every angle of the delivery, the drop-off, the bags sitting unattended, anyone approaching during the waiting period. The first delivery arrived at 2:17 in the afternoon. Tyler barely glanced up from his phone as he placed the bags on the porch and snapped a quick photo as proof of delivery before jogging back to his car. We reviewed the footage in real time, watching as the bags sat undisturbed for the 43 minutes until Marcus's assistant brought them inside. No suspicious figures approached. No one tampered with the contents. The coffee beans we'd specifically ordered tested negative for arsenic or any other toxins. "Maybe it's happening at the source," I suggested, frustrated after our third attempt yielded nothing. We expanded our investigation, checking the grocery services employees against any connections to Chad or my sister. Nothing concrete emerged. Then, 3 weeks into our investigation, I got a call from an unknown number while at work. I was in the doctor's lounge between consultations, reviewing a patient's MRI results on my tablet, when my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but after weeks of hypervigilance and investigation, I answered immediately, some instinct telling me this call was important. "Hello, doctor." A woman's voice purred, the sound sending ice through my veins. "Feeling under the weather lately?" My heart stuttered. "Who is this?" "A friend of your sister's. She sends her regards from jail." I ducked into an empty exam room, pressing my back against the door. "What do you want?" "For you to suffer like she's suffering, like her children are suffering without their mother." "Her children are with my parents," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "They're fine, for now," the voice said ominously. "But things change. People get hurt, especially when they stick their noses where they don't belong." The call disconnected with a click that seemed to echo in the small room. I immediately called Marcus, who contacted the prison to check my sister's call log and visitor list. "She's had 3 visitors in the past month," he reported back later that day. "Your parents and someone named Joyce Winters." The name meant nothing to me. We ran a background check and discovered Joyce was my sister's roommate from college. They'd stayed close over the years, with Joyce appearing in several of my sister's Instagram posts as my ride or die, and sister from another mister. "She works at a pharmaceutical company," Marcus said. "The piece is falling into place. Access to all kinds of chemicals, including arsenic compounds used in certain research applications. And she knows where I live because my sister knew," I realized, cold dread pooling in my stomach. "She could have made a copy of my key before Chad was arrested." They had access to my apartment for 2 weeks. We went to the police with our evidence, but without proof connecting Joyce to the poisoning, they could only question her. She denied everything, and her performance as the concerned friend was apparently convincing enough that, without a confession or direct evidence, they couldn't hold her. The detective, a tired-looking man named Benjamin Cox with coffee stains on his tie, advised me to move again and get another restraining order. "That's it?" I asked incredulously, voice rising. "Wait until she tries to kill me again?" "We need evidence," he said apologetically, spreading his hands. "Right now, all we have is circumstance and theory." I left the station seething, anger burning through my fatigue. Another move, another restraining order, another battle just to stay safe in a world that seemed determined to punish me for standing up for myself. That night, as I packed my essentials into a suitcase, planning to stay at a hotel until I found a new place. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Running again, doctor? You can't hide from family." I dropped the phone like it had burned me, backing away as if the message might leap from the screen. They knew I was leaving. They were watching me. The realization hit me with physical force, making my knees weak. I sank onto the edge of my bed, the half-packed suitcase a testament to my interrupted escape. The message glowed on my phone screen where it had fallen on the carpet, the words seeming to pulse with malevolent intent. The thought that someone was monitoring my movements, perhaps watching me at that very moment, made my skin crawl with violation. I called Marcus, who came over immediately with a security expert named Raj. They swept my apartment with professional efficiency and found 3 hidden cameras, one in the living room disguised as a smoke detector, one in the kitchen hidden in a cabinet hinge, and one in my bedroom tucked into the base of a lamp. Raj was a former military intelligence officer, his movements precise and methodical as he scanned every inch of my apartment with specialized equipment. He found the first camera within minutes, a tiny lens embedded in what appeared to be a standard smoke detector. The second took longer, hidden in the hinge mechanism of a kitchen cabinet I rarely used. The third discovery, in my bedroom, was the most disturbing. A camera positioned to capture my bed, my most private space violated by unknown eyes. The thought of someone watching me sleep, watching me change clothes, watching my most private moments, made my skin crawl with violation. "This is good," Marcus said, bagging the devices carefully. "Now we have physical evidence, fingerprints, purchase records. This is the break we needed." But Detective Cox remained frustratingly cautious when presented with the cameras. "These could have been installed by your ex before he was arrested. We can't prove Joyce placed them without direct evidence linking her to the devices." "Then let me help you prove it," I said, leaning forward across his cluttered desk. "Let me set a trap." I convinced the detective to let me stage an elaborate ruse. I would pretend to leave town for a medical conference, making sure Joyce knew through carefully placed social media posts. Meanwhile, police would monitor my apartment, waiting for her to make a move. The plan required meticulous attention to detail. I created a fake itinerary for a neurology conference in Chicago, complete with scheduled speakers and networking events. I booked a hotel room I wouldn't use and purchased plane tickets I wouldn't redeem. I packed appropriate luggage and arranged for a taxi to take me to the airport at a specific time. All the normal preparations someone would make for a professional trip. For 3 days, I stayed with Danny, my colleague from the hospital, who had finally gotten the full story out of me over a bottle of wine and sworn to secrecy. "This is some serious stalker shit," she said, helping me craft Instagram posts showing me at a fake conference in Chicago, complete with geotags and photos of the skyline I'd pulled from stock images. "Your family is toxic as hell." Danny's apartment became my sanctuary and command center. Her spare bedroom was transformed into an operations room of sorts. Laptops open to monitor my social media accounts and the police surveillance feed from my apartment. We created a convincing digital trail of my supposed Chicago trip, checking in at the airport on Facebook, posting a photo of a generic hotel room with the caption "Home for the next 3 days," tagging myself at the conference venue with comments about interesting presentations. "Tell me about it," I muttered, posting a selfie with a Chicago geotag and a caption about networking with neurology's finest minds. On the 3rd day, the police called. They'd caught Joyce breaking into my apartment with a vial of clear liquid and syringes. When confronted, she tried to claim she was watering my plants as a favor, but the chemical analysis of the liquid revealed it was an arsenic solution in a concentration that would have been lethal with direct injection. The arrest happened at 2:17 in the morning, Joyce apparently believing the middle of the night offered better cover for her activities. The police had been stationed in empty apartments on either side of mine, watching through sophisticated surveillance equipment as she used a key to enter silently. She wore surgical gloves and moved with the confidence of someone who had been there before, heading directly to my bedroom, where she intended to inject the poison into my pillowcase, a method that would ensure I inhaled small amounts with every breath during sleep. Finally, we had our proof. Joyce was arrested and charged with breaking and entering, stalking, and attempted murder. The evidence was overwhelming. The cameras traced to her credit card, the arsenic linked to her workplace, and her phone records showing the threatening call and text. The arrest made local news, a small article on page 3 with the headline, "Pharmaceutical Employee Arrested in Poisoning Plot." Joyce's mugshot showed her looking nothing like the polished woman from my sister's Instagram posts, her hair disheveled, eyes red-rimmed, expression dazed as the reality of her situation set in. The article mentioned her connection to my sister, but didn't delve into the full history, for which I was grateful. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days after Joyce's arrest, I received a letter at the hospital. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. My mother's elegant cursive that had once graced birthday cards and lunch notes. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive stationery my mother had always preferred for important correspondence. My name and the hospital address were written in her distinctive hand, the loops and flourishes as familiar to me as my own signature. I opened it during my lunch break, sitting alone in the doctor's lounge, a half-eaten sandwich forgotten as I unfolded the single page inside. You've torn this family apart. First Chad and your sister, now Joyce. When will your vendetta end? Your father had a heart attack yesterday from the stress. If he dies, that blood is on your hands too. I crumpled the letter, fighting back tears that burned hot with anger and hurt. Even now they blamed me, not the people who had cheated, stolen, and tried to poison me. Me. The paper crumpled satisfyingly in my fist, the physical destruction of the message providing momentary relief from the emotional impact of its contents. My hands shook with a combination of rage and disbelief. After everything that had happened, after the theft, the poisoning, the cameras, my parents still cast me as the villain in their narrative. I called my father's doctor, using my medical credentials to get information. He had indeed suffered a mild heart attack but was stable and recovering. The doctor mentioned stress as a likely factor but also noted his history of high cholesterol, hypertension, and poor diet, medical facts my mother had conveniently omitted. The conversation with my father's cardiologist was brief and professional, doctor to doctor rather than daughter to father's physician. Dr. Ramirez confirmed the myocardial infarction had been mild, the damage minimal, the prognosis good with proper medication and lifestyle changes. He's been non-compliant with his statin therapy for years, Dr. Ramirez added, unaware of the family dynamics at play. And his last 3 physicals showed consistently elevated blood pressure that he's refused to address. That evening, I sat in my apartment, still mine, though I'd removed every trace of the cameras and changed the locks again, and made a decision that felt like breaking and healing all at once. I was done running, done hiding, done being the victim in a story written by people who never had my best interests at heart. The apartment felt different after the discovery of the cameras. Spaces I had once moved through freely were now scrutinized for potential threats, corners examined for hidden devices, everyday objects regarded with suspicion. I'd hired a professional security team to sweep the entire place twice, removing any remaining surveillance equipment and installing countermeasures against future intrusions. The new locks were military-grade, the windows fitted with sensors that would alert me to any breach. The entire apartment was now a fortress against those who wished me harm. I called Marcus. I want to sue them all, I said, voice steady with resolve. Civil suit, emotional distress, conspiracy, the works. Your family too, he asked, caution in his tone. Especially my family. The lawsuit sent shockwaves through our small hometown. Local papers picked up the story, Dr. Sue's family after poisoning attempt. My inbox filled with messages, some supportive from colleagues and distant friends, others hateful from people who believe families should stick together no matter what. The story spread quickly through the town where I'd grown up, where everyone knew everyone else's business, where gossip was the primary form of entertainment. Former classmates I hadn't spoken to in years sent messages ranging from supportive to accusatory. Neighbors who had watched me grow up took sides, some defending my right to safety, others condemning my betrayal of family values. The local diner where I worked summers during high school became an unofficial debate hall, patrons arguing over coffee about whether blood really was thicker than water. A week before the first hearing, I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. You need to drop this, a man's voice said, gruff with emotion. Not Chad, someone older. Dad. I hadn't heard his voice in years, and the familiarity of it hit me like a physical blow. His voice sounded older than I remembered, rougher around the edges, the slight tremor suggesting either emotion or the beginning of age-related changes. In my mind's eye, I could see him as he must look now. More gray in his hair, deeper lines around his eyes, the strong hands that had once pushed my bicycle now perhaps showing the swollen joints of arthritis. Please, he said, his voice breaking. We've lost enough. For a moment, I wavered. This was my father, the man who taught me to ride a bike, who checked for monsters under my bed, who once upon a time had been my hero. Then I remembered the security footage of Chad and my sister stealing my belongings, the positive toxicology results, the cameras in my bedroom, my mother's letter blaming me for his heart attack. The memories flashed through my mind in rapid succession, not just the recent betrayals but older ones too. My father standing silently by when my mother blamed me for Chad's infidelity, his absence at my medical school graduation, his refusal to take my calls after I moved away, the years of choosing peace over justice, comfort over truth, the path of least resistance over standing up for his daughter. You haven't lost anything, I said coldly, gripping the phone tight. You chose them every time. You chose the people who hurt me over your own daughter. The civil case proceeded despite my family's attempts to have it dismissed. Joyce, already facing criminal charges, quickly settled, admitting in a sworn statement that she had acted at my sister's direction. My parents fought harder, denying any knowledge of the poisoning scheme, presenting themselves as innocent bystanders caught in family drama. The courtroom for the civil case was larger than the criminal one had been, the proceedings more formal. My parents sat across the aisle, my mother in a conservative dress that screamed respectable matron, my father in his best suit, the one reserved for weddings and funerals. They avoided my gaze, focusing instead on their attorney, a slick-looking man with an expensive watch and practiced expressions of concern. Then came the bombshell. During discovery, Marcus uncovered text messages between my mother and Joyce discussing the plan to scare me. My mother hadn't known about the arsenic specifically, but she'd known Joyce was planning to teach me a lesson for what I'd done to the family. The text messages were displayed on screens throughout the courtroom, the damning evidence impossible to ignore. My mother's messages were particularly incriminating. She needs to understand there are consequences for attacking family. And later, Joyce has a plan to scare some sense into her. I don't want details, just results. The judge was unimpressed with their excuses. This court has rarely seen such a coordinated campaign of harassment and endangerment against a family member, he said during his ruling, voice heavy with disapproval. The plaintiff sought justice through legal channels after being victimized, only to be subjected to further victimization for doing so. In the end, I won substantial damages from Joyce, Chad, my sister, and yes, my parents. The money didn't matter. I donated most of it to a domestic abuse shelter. But the vindication did. The judgment came to just over $1,200,000 in total compensation for stolen property, medical expenses related to the poisoning, security system installation, therapy costs, and punitive damages intended to discourage similar behavior in the future. The judge was particularly harsh in his assessment of my parents' role, noting that, as the older generation, they had a responsibility to discourage criminal behavior rather than enable it. As I left the courthouse after the final hearing, a reporter from the local news approached me, microphone extended. "Dr. Sanders, how does it feel to win your case?" I paused, considering my words carefully. This was never about winning. It was about truth, about consequences. For too long, I believed I deserved what happened to me. I don't. No one does. That night, I sat on my balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, my mother's necklace around my neck for the first time since its return. My phone buzzed with a text from Danny. "Drinks to celebrate? The whole department's talking about your badass court victory." The balcony offered a view of the city skyline, buildings silhouetted against the dramatic sunset. A gentle breeze carried the scent of someone grilling nearby, the distant sound of traffic creating a soothing white noise. The necklace felt both foreign and familiar against my skin. The delicate silver chain, the small sapphire pendant that caught the fading light. It had been my mother's most treasured possession, given to me on my 16th birthday with promises that it symbolized family legacy and love. Now it represented something different, reclamation, boundaries, the price of betrayal. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. "Rain check?" I texted back. "I'm enjoying some me time tonight." For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt at peace. No looking over my shoulder, no wondering who might be watching or plotting against me. Just the quiet certainty that I had fought for myself and won. The next morning, I woke to a text from an unknown number. My heart rate spiked until I read the message. "This is Willie from security. Just confirming your new system is active and monitoring 24/7. All alerts will go to both your phone and our command center." I relaxed, texting back a quick thanks. The new security system had cost a fortune, but the peace of mind was worth every penny. At the hospital that day, I noticed people looking at me differently, not with pity or curiosity, but with something like respect. Dr. Charlotte Smirnoff, the intimidating head of neurology who rarely acknowledged junior staff, actually stopped me in the hallway, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. "Heard about your court case," she said briskly, her Russian accent more pronounced than usual. "Good for you. Standing up for yourself takes guts." "Thank you," I said, surprised by the recognition from someone who typically noticed nothing beyond research publications. "We have an opening in the department," she continued, adjusting her glasses. "Research position, fewer clinical hours, more academic work. Might suit someone who's been through a stressful time and needs a more predictable schedule." I blinked, processing the unexpected offer. "I'd be interested in learning more," she nodded sharply. "My office, tomorrow, 9 in the morning. Don't be late." As she walked away, white coat billowing behind her, I felt something unfamiliar, hope, not just for safety or justice, but for a future that might actually be better than my past. That evening, I treated myself to dinner at a small restaurant near my apartment, a quiet place with warm lighting and tables spaced far enough apart for privacy. As I waited for my food, savoring a glass of wine that tasted like celebration, I noticed a man at the bar glancing my way. The restaurant was cozy without being cramped, soft jazz playing at a volume that allowed conversation without straining to hear. The lighting was amber-tinted, flattering to everyone it touched, creating pools of warmth rather than harsh illumination. My table was in a corner that offered a view of both the entrance and the bar, a habit of positioning myself with awareness of my surroundings that I developed during the months of being stalked. He was handsome, with kind eyes and a book I recognized, the same medical ethics text I'd been teaching from. He caught me looking and smiled apologetically, a slight flush coloring his cheeks. "Sorry for staring, you look familiar." "I'm a doctor at Memorial," I offered cautiously, years of betrayal making me wary of strangers. "That's it," he said, recognition lighting his face. "I just started there. Jude Brooks, pediatric oncology." "Ah, you're the new attending everyone's talking about," I said, remembering the hospital gossip. "The one who turned down Johns Hopkins to come here." He laughed, the sound genuine and warm. "Guilty as charged. And you're the doctor who sued her entire family in one go." I tensed, deciding to get it out of the way, test his reaction. To my surprise, he didn't look shocked or uncomfortable. "That was you. I read about that case." Honestly, it was impressive. Standing up to family is the hardest thing. Something in his tone suggested personal experience. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a notification from my security system. Someone was at my door. I checked the camera feed and froze. Chad's mother, Sandra, stood there with a large envelope, her expression unreadable. The security app showed a clear image of Sandra, her hair grayer than I remembered, her posture slightly stooped with age, but her face still bearing the same stern expression she'd always worn when dealing with me. The envelope in her hands was large, manila, the type used for legal documents. My mind raced with possibilities. Another lawsuit, a threat, some new attempt to manipulate or harm me. "Everything okay?" Jude asked, noticing my expression. "Just family drama that never seems to end," I said, texting security to check on the visitor. I hesitated, then looked up at him. "I'm heading home after this. Want company walking back?" He hesitated, and for a moment, I thought I'd misread the situation. Then he smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I'd like that if you're sure." I nodded. Years of betrayal made me wary, but something about his straightforward offer, with no hint of expectation, felt different from Chad's manipulations. "Actually, yes," I decided, returning his smile. "That would be nice."